Welcome back, everybody. I hope you managed to have a bit of a break. I'm delighted to now welcome Professor Diane Purchase, who's Professor of Environmental Biotechnology at Middlesex University, London, who was on the benchmark team. And we're delighted that, Diane, you're going to give us an overview of employability and entrepreneurship from the point of view of the benchmarks. So thank you very much, Diane.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for the organisers for giving me this opportunity to give an overview of the employability, entrepreneurship and enterprise, part of the benchmark statement. So we heard a lot about the benchmark statement this morning, and Sean gave a brilliant overview of what has been changed and what has been added to this new benchmark statement. And we heard a lot about ED&I. Alison gave a very brilliant presentation about this was the section that was missing from the benchmark statement. So from the previous edition of the benchmark statement, we know that they did mention some sustainability and employability, but that wasn't very well teased out. But in this new version of the benchmark statement, a lot more emphasis now has been placed on the sustainability, ED&I, and also for employability, we expanded it to include entrepreneurship and enterprise education. So we're putting more emphasis on this particular area. So I'm going to give you a little overview of our working group and what we have come up with. So our work on the benchmark statement is divided into different working groups. We have one group working with the ED&I, one group working on the sustainability aspect. So our working group is looking at employability, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. So it is led by Professor Debbie Bartlett from Greenwich University. She held a very tight rein and marshaled us all into a place to produce this working document. And she's ably supported by Richard Howe from the Environment Agency, Professor Linda Kirsten from University of Edinburgh, and Dr. Bethan Wood from University of Glasgow, and myself to work on this particular aspect of the benchmark statement. I think it will be useful to give a definition of what this three specific area is about in relationship to the benchmark statement. So the employability definitions is mostly coming from York. This definition has been adapted throughout the HE. So this is the definition that we also look at and also build on. So we deem that employability is a set of competencies which demonstrated by a combination of knowledge, so academic knowledge and skills, so practical skills, transferable skills, and other skills that are related to environmental science and the environmental studies and the earth sciences discipline. And also behaviors including professional behaviors. So it is a combination of these three categories that will make our students become more likely to gain employment and also be successful in their chosen occupations. So that not just bringing benefit to themselves, but to the wider society and also to economy. So this is what we worked on based on this definition. So employability we looked at includes a number of things. We think the important aspects are problems identification and solving, innovation, creativity, expression, communication, and practical action. These are pretty much in line with, for example, the top 10 employability skills in STEM subject area. So if we look at on the right-hand side, we see a number of these employability skills, I beg your pardon, that is most wanted by employer. So for us, we listed these 6 big categories we think will be very useful for our discipline. And it will be interesting to see whether the employers, from the employer's perspective, this is also what they want from our graduate. And in the following talk, Dr. Pitchell from Southampton University will go into look at a survey we conducted within the IES membership to see whether some of the skills are indeed what the employers wanted. There may be a couple of surprises there. In terms of entrepreneurship, it's the application of enterprise behavior, attributes, and competence, again, to create cultural, social, and economic values. We realize that for a lot of the times, people regard entrepreneurship is solely from an economic aspect, but it is wider than that. It includes cultural and social aspects and these values too. So we specifically use that in our benchmark statement, and it can and does not exclusively lead to venture creation. So we stress quite strongly that it is more than just wealth creating. In terms of enterprise, so it's the generation and application of ideas which are set within a practical situation during a project or undertaking. So we believe it is a generic concept that can be applied across all areas of education and the profession life. Of that, there are a number of characteristics that we would like to flag up. In terms of behavior, for example, that could include taking initiatives, making things happen, reflecting, communicating, adapting, taking responsibility, networking, personal effectiveness, and managing risk-taking. In terms of the attributes, it can include open-mindedness, proactivity, curiosity, flexibility, adaptability, determination, and resilience. So it is not prescribed in the benchmark statement, but these are the characteristics that may be useful in defining enterprise and help our students to achieve the enterprise characteristics. And in terms of skills, it could include initiative, decision-making, identified opportunities, creative problem solving, innovation, strategic thinking, design thinking, amongst a lot of these particular skills. So there is clearly a synergy between employability, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. And this is a nice diagram from HEA provided, which encapsulated some of the ideas how these 3 E's are interconnected. So within employability, we have this using the enterprise to provide the behavior, the attributes, and the competency. So that will support our employability, and all 3 will become incorporated to improve employment and entrepreneurship. Amongst the 3 environmental science, earth environmental studies, and earth science subject, in the benchmark statement, we identified there are 2 specific areas that are important to for our students in terms of employability, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. The first is competency, which I talked about earlier on in terms of knowledge, skills, and behavior. It's also, there are a number of transferable themes which will cut across the 3 subject area. So, for example, and the competency of the students will be able to identify opportunities for developing ventures, so business awareness, or become self-employed, setting up new business, or developing and growing part of an existing venture. So also adopting the professional ethics, which will be reflected by their behavior. And in terms of health and safety codes, is to make sure they operate in a safe environment and also personal innovation. So all these are cut across these 3 subject areas. Clearly, competency is very important for our students to demonstrate their competencies and their employability and their skills. So in the benchmark statement, we looked at 2 different areas, earth sciences and also environmental science and environmental studies in the second group. For the earth science, colleagues from earth science subject area identify that the competency for that subject area will include selection, application, and interpretation of numerical, digital, qualitative and quantitative techniques. So, and understand the earth system in that 4 dimensions. So atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, for example. So these are the areas that earth science colleagues consider these are very important competency skills for that particular subject area. In terms of environmental science and studies, we identify that as competent students should have the competency in looking at emerging good practice within the field, survey data analysis and techniques, and also a broader range of knowledge of current legislation and policy, and to identify the impacts on the environment from this policy. So these are the competency skills that we consider quite important for our students. So in the next session, we will have a look at what are is it mirrored with what the employers think? Are these the competency skills that they want from our graduates?
Sorry, Diane, you've just got a couple of minutes left. Okay. Thank you.
I'm winding up now. So for the benchmark statement, we didn't specifically say what does it involve in teaching and learning for employability, entrepreneurship, and enterprise. But I will recommend very strongly in looking at this particular document produced by the QAA, which is the Enterprise Entrepreneurship Guidance, which provides some suggestions in terms of teaching and learning. So a number of good suggestions here, for example, how to develop realistic and relevant high engagement, high impact activities to engage our students, and using some of the experiential learning strategies. It's also some points about assessment, how to learn about, to assess for whether students have learned about entrepreneurship, learning for entrepreneurship, and learning through entrepreneurship. So very quickly to conclude, we're hoping that the benchmark statement will prepare students for the changing environment and enhanced impact through displacement activities and build links between academic institution and external organization, and also provide competency to lead a rewarding and self-determined professional life. So as I said, this is the document to refer to support our curriculum development in these areas. And thank you for listening.
Many thanks, Diane. That's incredibly helpful. While we're waiting for some questions from other colleagues, can you tell us a little bit about, obviously for IES and chairs, we've gone out and spoken to employers, and we're really looking forward to that next presentation that you and Pete are giving. But to what extent were the QAA panel able to draw on input from employers, or how did your panel members have links with employers to draw on that area of expertise?
Yes, we gathered quite a few responses in the consultation stage, send out documents to different professional bodies, IES included, to gauge their reaction and their feedback to see whether we have managed to capture what employers want. And also in our particular task group, we have Rob, who is working for the Environment Agency. So he is from a employer perspective when he looked at the benchmark statement. So we have quite a diverse team in the bigger advisory panel, and within our group we have a mixture of academics and also employers to inform on that benchmark statement.
Diane, that's fantastic. So we have one question coming in. Are there any particular skills or competencies that you think might be more challenging to implement into the curriculum rather than others, or to assess as well? Is there anything that might be more challenging?
I think the entrepreneurship has been sort of identified as one of the more challenging aspect of these 3 E's to implement, because that does involve certain acumen in identifying opportunity outside academia. So that is more challenging for us to implement in the curriculum. So we will need, clearly, working with other stakeholders in order to build this curriculum to address these 3 E's.
Thank you, Diane. And then Adam's made a comment really about that the Trailblazer groups have done a lot of work engaging with employers when devising the standards for environmental practitioner degree apprenticeship. So that's really a useful evidence base for people to have a look at. And then we have another question from Carolyn. Do you have any ideas on how requirements and different skills and expertise have sort of shifted over the last decade, and where this might take us in future, particularly in relation to entrepreneurship, employability, etc.? Because curriculum change can take quite a long time. But have you got any insights into how things have changed and where they might be going? That's quite a tricky question, Carolyn.
That is a very, very difficult question, Carolyn. I wish we have a crystal ball to be able to answer this question. So I think Pete is nicely jumped in to say, listen to the next panel. So we will answer that question after Pete's presentation.